Praunda, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear us okay. Welcome back to the Wales Biodiversity Partnership Conference. And this is our afternoon workshop session on Natur Am Byth. And we are joined by a number of partners involved in Natur Am Byth. And we're going to wait just maybe a few more seconds to allow people to come into the room. We can see participant numbers are building. Just say so this will be recorded and the presentation will be available to people from the WPP website later on. And I'll run through the proceedings for the workshop. So this is going to be an interactive session. Getting some feedback from Sorrow that the feedback's pretty bad. So what I might do, if perhaps we turn off cameras for now, except for myself in the first session. So we'll just keep it to one video for now, if that's okay. Hopefully that will help with the feedback for everybody. Hopefully that's a little bit better. That's great. Okay, so excellent. So got some feedback there from people that it seems to be working okay. Right, fantastic. So as I say, Pranada, good afternoon, everybody. And this is going to be a workshop session, so an interactive session, and we're going to be very blatant in the fact that this is to help shape this project for the whole sector, Natur Am Byth, delivering for the whole environment sector in Wales. So there's going to be an outline presentation from myself at the start to provide some context of where this developing project is at. And then we're going to have some breakout sessions. We're going to have 40 minutes of breakout sessions. There's two themes, so there'll be two different rooms that delegates will be pulled into. I'm afraid you can't choose which one you're going to go into. And that because the technology and the time we've got, so you'll be assigned a room with some facilitators, and then we will come back to a plenary session towards the end of the workshop where we can cross-pollinate between those two different sessions. So just so I can just give some introductions, where the resilient sector section, breakout session, will be facilitated by Kate Measures from Heritage Insider, who's a consultant that's been working with Natur Am Byth, the development of the bid, and also Julian Hughes from RSPB Cymru will be working with Kate to facilitate that session. And then the Delivering Pace-Based Priorities breakout will be facilitated by myself, from John Clark from NIW, and Sinead Lynch from Bumblebee Conservation Trust, and Steve Lucas from Bat Conservation Trust. So considering the time that we've got, I'm going to kickstart with the presentation to set the scene. So Natur Am Byth is a partnership between 10 organisations, so 9 environmental NGOs. So we've got Amphibian and Reptile Conservation, Bumblebee Conservation Trust, Bug Life, Bat Conservation Trust, Butterfly Conservation, RSPB, Plant Life, Marine Conservation Society, and Vincent Wildlife Trust, working with Natural Resources Wales. Those are the core partners, but there are a huge number of delivery partners that we have consulted with and want to continue to discuss with. And part of today's conference, we're essentially using this as an opportunity to help shape the bid and get feedback from across the sector to ensure that this partnership can be as strong as possible in delivering against the nature emergency. So Natur Am Byth is a flagship project. It's currently sitting around about £7.8 million, but it will be a bid to the National Otter Heritage Fund in March 2021, focusing on the most threatened species and reconnecting people to nature. So this really is seen as a response to the nature emergency. So if I just click through here, it's very much been developed in the context of the green recovery agenda. A lot of development for this project has happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. Discussion on Natur Am Byth, or a Back from the Brink for Wales project, started about 3 years ago, and then since January we've really upped the pace in designing the bid. But it's set very much in the context of the nature emergency, the green recovery within Wales, in the context of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Environment Act. But it has to deliver in the context of existing partnerships, existing policies. So we heard from the Minister earlier today, the Natural Resources Policy. We've got the NRAP, we've got the area statements opportunities and priorities all coming down, and Natur Am Byth as a key project to deliver against these complementary policies and plans. So we have a program vision, which we're going to go back to as part of the breakout sessions. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this slide, but it is very important that the vision is correct and that it's delivering for the whole sector. We've got some key cross-cutting principles you can see down there on the left-hand side. Delivering multiple benefits and actually cross-taxa working is fundamental to how Natur Am Byth has been designed and developed, taking a place-based approach and linking well-being to wildlife, inclusivity throughout everything, and celebrating Welsh language and culture. As this is a lottery project that we are applying to National Lottery Heritage Fund, there's a huge people engagement and outreach agenda to this project. I want to be demonstrating sustainable management of natural resources and maximising the ripple effect so that this programme can actually spread across the sector and inform how we work in Wales. So we are not alone. Natur Am Byth is part of a family of UK species recovery projects. Rethink Nature, the consortium of 7 NGOs, you can see in the top left-hand side of the screen there, kick-started in 2013 on the back of the State of Nature report launched by David Attenborough back then, which led to the Back from the Brink project, which is a partnership between those core ENGOs and Rethink Nature with Natural England as a statutory lead. And there was a successful application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and that is now in its final year of delivery. There's been a lot of learning in that process. Kate Measures, who's joining us today for the workshop, has been part of the monitoring and evaluation of that programme and has brought that experience into Natur Am Byth. And the project has then gone on to be replicated in Scotland with similar themes, but focusing around the coastal margins and islands of Scotland. Same group of Rethink Nature partners working with Nature Scot, that's the new name for Scottish Natural Heritage. And they successfully secured funding from the lottery earlier this year. So they are in their development phase now. So this is the timeline for Natur Am Byth. As I mentioned earlier, we are aiming for a March 2021 submission. We wouldn't hear back from the lottery until June 2021, and then we'd have an 18-month development phase. I want to stress the importance of that because that is the period at which we can test some of the assumptions that have been made in the application. We can ensure we consult further and deeper with a range of delivery partners across Wales to then ensure that our stage 2 submission that we'd make in March 2023 would be really fit for purpose. And then we've got a 4-year delivery phase running up to September 2027. So in terms of the criteria we've used to select species, and we haven't got a huge amount of time to dwell on this, but obviously extinction risk and vulnerability within Wales was absolutely fundamental to choosing a long list of species. Those species particularly important in a Welsh context, if Wales has a particular responsibility of that species in terms of its distribution, its range. But also, number 3 there, what can this project do to actually demonstrate recovery for that species? You can see there the species recovery curve, which was used in Back from the Brink. There are a range of other methods to demonstrate positive change in species populations, and we'll be really investigating those in the development phase if we secure the funding from National Lottery. In terms of where we're going to be delivering, so this is just a kind of map to show that the snapshot of where the on-the-ground delivery is going to be focused. I'm just going to run through some of the kind of key areas here. In the northwest of Wales, RSPB Cymru have led working with a range of partners on the Llŷn Peninsula and Ynys Môn, particularly west of Anglesey, some key priority habitats and a range of over 20 target species that wanted to bring forward within Natur Am Byth. And then there's also a huge amount of delivery for the marine environment offshore off the Llŷn Peninsula and Western Anglesey that Marine Conservation Society have led in the development. A number of partners have been involved in shaping the plans on the ground there. You've got seagrass beds, you've got the Cliff Mason Bay there in the Llŷn Peninsula, one of the most important lowland nesting populations of curlew in the Cefni Valley. Then up into the uplands, Eryri in Snowdonia, we've got a range of important Arctic alpines and actually fern species linked with some key invertebrates. really exciting project there that Plant Life have led with NRW, the Stoney National Park Association, as well as Cymdeithas Hareri and the National Trust, to look at actually some real opportunities there for potential ex situ cultivation of boreal Arctic alpines, actually responding to potential vertical migration and climate change, as well as celebrating Hareri, Snowdonia, as one of the sort of birthplaces of modern botany and natural history. So a really exciting project there. Then over to Northeast Wales, we've got the Scarce Yellow Sally, which is a single species project that BugLife have put forward. So that is a species at a complete western edge of its range there on the River Dee. Then down into Mid Wales, you've got the Welsh Marshes project, which has been led by Plant Life with NRW, the local Wildlife Trust, Radnorshire Wildlife Trust, Montgomeryshire Wildlife Trust, other partners, particularly focused on a range of lower plants, lichens, and how we can mitigate and protect against local airborne pollution impacts on those sites across private landowners as well as some designated sites. Then in Southeast Wales, we've got Bumblebee Conservation Trust, who've led developing a Shrill Carnaby project that spans across South Wales, so the whole of the South Wales range of the Shrill Carnaby, delivering for the Shrill Carnaby conservation strategy there, but also other species that can benefit on the back of interventions for Shrill Carnaby. So starting in the Gwent Levels, between Cardiff and Newport and other parts of Gwent Levels, over into Kenfig in South Central Wales, and then South West Wales and South Pembrokeshire. Butterfly Conservation have led in developing a project to tackle the high brown patillary in the Vale of Glamorgan, as well as a number of the NGOs were sort of working in partnership within these integrated areas. And you can see here in South Wales, in Swansea Bay area, we've got a project that's been developed by Amphibian and Reptile Conservation and BugLife to tackle a whole range of species, inverts, plants. There's also herps there as well. So that's a really innovative project there, particularly linked with urban engagement in the communities, particularly in Nath Talbot, linking Fenraff Spider to other communities. Really exciting urban engagement there. And then in Pembrokeshire, we've got a number of initiatives. We've got Vincent Wildlife Trust leading on the Barbastell project, and we've got Pink Sea Fan off Scomer, crawfish, as well as native oyster, so Marine Conservation Society focusing not just in North West Wales, but also in South West Wales. But none of these projects will exist in isolation. There's a number of partners working together for delivery in these areas. So we can return to this map later on, but just to show you it's that range of integrated areas, single species projects, but then a hugely ambitious engagement program that will be happening, obviously, where we've got the targeted conservation work, but also nationally, so we can move forward the agenda for species conservation across Wales. We've got a huge number of target species that are listed within Natur Am Byth. There's about 70 or so listed. These are to be confirmed. So the target species will likely be adapted and changed during the 18-month development phase, but we've put a lot of work into designing a package of works that really complement each other, where we've got a range of species complementing, and that multi-taxa approach really being taken forward. And a huge number of delivery partners that we want to engage with, and we already have had a number of discussions. It's fair to say, because a huge amount of this work has been actually developed during the pandemic, during the lockdown, we haven't had as many opportunities and as many of the conversations we would have actually been able to have. And this is one of the reasons why we really wanted to have this on the agenda as part of the WBP conference, so that we can actually ensure we got opportunities for people to engage, to shape, and to help design the bid that ultimately goes into the lottery. So the monies, I think it is important that we dwell on this, because as the Minister mentioned at the start of this conference, we've had a fantastic endorsement from Welsh Government for this project, a commitment of £30,000 for the 18-month development phase, and then also a commitment conditional to the outcome of the election, obviously in the spring, of a further £800,000 over the 4-year delivery phase. We'll be asking the lottery of around £4.6 million contribution towards the overall programme of works, and then NRW is actually committing 1.7 million towards the Natur Am Byth programme. We'll also be seeking charitable income from trust foundations, so a fundraising effort to the tune of about £300,000 to fund the delivery phase. So this is a this is a consortium bid, multiple different forms of income, but it's fantastic to get the political endorsement there from Welsh Government, because Natur Am Byth, because of its wide-reaching nature across marine, terrestrial, freshwater, such a range of species, and embedding species conservation into the ecosystem resilience agenda and the well-being agenda, it's a far-reaching and ambitious program, and it's fantastic to have that range of funders. And it's not just for the core partners that we mentioned at the top of this workshop. This needs to deliver for the whole sector, and there's so many delivery partners and organisations and communities we want this to deliver for and to be part in shaping. We can talk a bit more about this in the breakout sessions potentially, but there is, in terms of the green recovery agenda, there will be an injection of new staff across the partners, but also a huge number of contracts. So this will be a large procurement exercise. There'll be lots of contractors we'll be able to work with, and delivery partners that can aid us either through partnership or through procurement or through contribution of in kind. So there's lots of different ways that partners can become involved, but we're looking at about 7.8 full-time equivalents during the 18-month development phase, and around about 18 FTEs full-time equivalents in the 4-year delivery phase as well. So it's quite a significant, that new staff creation across the sector. And it's not just about new staff, it's about volunteers. It's about the training opportunities for volunteers, and also for new recruits and other people coming into the programme. It's about how we can upskill contractors. Some of these areas are going to be particularly deep rural parts of Wales, where in fact Natur Am Byth could be responsible for upskilling contractors and others seeking to work within nature conservation and the environment sector. That there are huge opportunities here to actually kind of raise the bar, and we have sort of developed this bid in response to the Green Recovery Agenda, and many of you across the voluntary sector will be being part of that process that has been led by NW's chairman. And I have to mention the area statements in terms of the priorities and opportunities that have been flagged by those who've been involved in the area statement engagement and development. Reversing the decline of biodiversity is a theme across area statements, and this is where we want to see Natur Am Byth as a delivery agent for those, but also for local nature partnerships, for the nature recovery action plans at the local level, and for existing networks of practitioners and professionals. This partnership can't exist in isolation of existing initiatives. We really have to see how it's helping deliver agendas across Wales. And part of that is going to be engagement and also our communications exercise. One of the positives from the Back from the Brink initiative in England has been the ability to raise awareness for those particularly vulnerable and rare species and the importance of that intrinsic value of biodiversity. And we will have an ambitious engagement program as part of Natur Am Byth. We've got individuals helping with workshop today who've very much been part of helping shape that. Everyone who's part of the breakout sessions is either on the steering group, or Kate, as I mentioned, has been working with us in developing this program. Inclusion is fundamental. Reaching new audiences, because this is a lottery project. That's always important to any lottery funded project, but it's important to us as a sector is to not just speak to ourselves, but to speaking to new audiences and using new ways to reach those audiences. So quite an exciting element of Natur Am Byth is the use of the arts, using arts practitioners in our engagement program to really, as I say, reach those new audiences and think about new ways to interpret about the natural world. Building that connection to place, Cynefin, a wonderful concept in Wales about that sense of place. The visibility of biodiversity and nature conservation and species conservation as part of the ecosystem resilience agenda, and actually the importance of, in Wales, our legislative framework that we have here. I think really celebrating what we can do within the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Environment Act, advocating the importance of species conservation, and actually training not just land managers, practitioners, but even policymakers about the importance of biodiversity within the context of how we operate across the public sector and the sector generally in Wales. So quite quite a tall order there, but really ambitious program and the right time for us to take this forward. So we're going to return back to the vision as part of the breakout sessions, and really to ask you as partners, as potential people who are going to take part in the project when we're hopefully delivering, how we can actually really deliver against our vision. This is our program vision. I've already covered some of this earlier, but I think we're going to have some key questions to help focus that discussion as part of our breakout. How we can really inspire people from across all walks of life in Wales, how we can actually secure a new wave of conservation ambassadors and practitioners, and actually how we can embed species conservation into the resilient ecosystem agenda. That's my main sort of context, the sort of to kick off and provide an update on where things are at with how the bid's developing. I want to stress again the fact that this is a pre-development stage, so we've still got the opportunity to engage more to help shape particularly our outreach and engagement program. So that's one of the purposes of today's workshop. I think it looks like we are actually on time, which is good news. So just to outline what's going to happen next, as I said, people will be assigned into separate breakout sessions. Sorry to say you can't determine which one you're going to be in, so you'll pop into one of them, either the resilient sector, which will be headed up by Kate Measures and Julian Hughes from RSPB, and then the delivering place-based priorities, which will be Steve Lucas from Bat Conservation, Sinead Lynch from Bumblebee Conservation, and myself. And then we're going to come all back together. In terms of how the technology will work, you'll have the ability to talk during the breakout sessions, but we're going to ask each of the facilitators to probably line up questions. So you can use the chat box. There'll also be a whiteboard that the presenters can put text up on as well. I think we have to just see how we get on. This is probably a new experience for a number of you, but I think if I'm going to hand over to Adam, who's going to be able to create our breakout sessions now, and then we will come back together just after just after 4:30. We'll come back together for the plenary session. So Adam, if you're okay to set up the breakup sessions, then we can start the next phase.
Yeah, everything's ready. I'm just going to send you all there in 3, 2, 1.
Brilliant. Okay, I can see some chats coming through now. So Adam, can I just ask, how many people have we got? 33 participants now that are in this breakout. Is that right?
There's 37 people in this one.
Fantastic. Okay, brill. Right. So sorry about the getting the tech working there, but we're still sort of roughly on time now. Folks, this is to help ensure that this project, Natur Am Byth, actually delivers for nature recovery action plans and other existing networks. So again, I mentioned that we don't want this project to operate in isolation of other good work that's already been set, or those good networks that already exist. So because we want this to be part of a green recovery agenda, this has to be seen to really be delivering for a range of partners across the sector. So I've broken it down into 3 main questions. So we've got question A, this is specific to the Nature Recovery Action Plan. So what's the best mechanism to ensure that Natur Am Byth delivers and reports progress for priority species to local nature partnerships? Then got a question around aligning with existing networks. So how can we ensure that Natur Am Byth is informed by existing networks and local expertise? And then the third question here, which is about the practitioners network, in terms of how can we ensure new project staff and volunteers that are actually hired and trained as part of Natur Am Byth actually integrate with those working at the local level. So sort of 3 main questions to try and drive forward discussion around the overarching question. Text is back. That's fine. So if we can start with question A, and really this is an opportunity for delegates to put forward their thoughts. Really, so if you can use the chat bar to sort of raise your hand. There is a raising hand facility, I think, at the top as well. But maybe if you can put just put a comment in the chat bar to say you'd like to say something. If you want us to read it out, as in you don't want to use your own microphone, then can you just put read in capital letters at the start of your comment, please, and then one of us, either Steve or Sinead, will read it out. I think I've talked enough now. So by all means, folks, please do start putting comments in against question A. And Steve and Sinead, if you want to put on your mics as well, so we can talk. Right, who's going to be brave enough to say something?
So this first question is about how NAB sort of reports in at the local level, isn't it?
Yeah. I think a lot of this part of the breakout is about ensuring that we respect and integrate with local networks and local agendas. So Fion's gathering some thoughts, need a couple of minutes to ponder, that's fine. Sinead or Steve, do you want to read out Matthew's?
Perhaps create some kind of blog where different partners can update everyone by posting what's going on. That was from Matthew Hope.
Yeah, so that's about how we can use sort of technology. So there'll be a dedicated website, and there'll be an engagement development officer in the 18-month development phase, and then there'll be a dedicated comms officer as well as an engagement coordinator in the 4-year delivery phase. So there's going to be, staff resource to feed thoughts in. So no, that's a good suggestion from Matthew. Also, just to say that the chat bar here will be saved as part of the conference, and so all these contributions will be captured and treated as part of this kind of consultation exercise. Okay.
So Sorrel's got a point there about presumably by the time the project officers are on the ground, the LNP officers will be up and running with their local NRAPs.
That would fall in line with the right timeline, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's a good point, Sorrel. For those who aren't familiar with the LNP coordinator's role, does anybody want to use their mic to elaborate a bit more on that? Or Sorrel, if you feel free to come off mute if you want to say. I see, I put you on the spot, Sorrel. Oh, sorry, Sorrel, we can't hear you, unfortunately. So perhaps if Dave or someone else wants to talk about the LNP coordinators.
Each of the local authorities has got an LNP coordinator, which is funded by Welsh Government, but through WCVA, but they're all based in the local authorities as the kind of leads. So in all the areas, actually, natural coordinator who's already in contact with a lot of the partners, most or the partners that are relevant to that area, which are in the Natur Am Byth program. So that's
Dave,
going to be contact with our authority.
I'm afraid you broke up quite a lot there, but we did. I think we captured some of what you said there, but it's just in the context of the this central funding for LNP coordinators that will be housed across local authorities. And I'm afraid we didn't catch all of it there, but yeah, I think that's fundamental is making sure that this project, if we secure the funding, this project is absolutely sort of on the radar for LNP coordinators. And when we've got that new staff resource for the project, we need to ensure we're working really closely with those coordinators once they're all enrolled. Does that sound okay, folks? Captured that?
I'm a bit perplexed by Roy Tapping's comment. Roy's saying it isn't important to choose the right priority species. Roy, I take it you mean it is important. You need data to choose them and also data to report on progress.
Yeah, sorry.
I would suggest Lurks can deal with this sort of data.
Yeah, sorry, it's a typo.
Yes, I thought so.
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, I noticed that when you were giving your presentation, you said that Lurk's been consulted on this. I think Lurks can play a really important role for not only providing you with the data that gives you some sort of baseline, but also measuring change. And I think that I'd like to think that measure of change would also be reported back very much to the funders as well, so you can utilise the data to actually give an important measure of your success of the funding as well.
I think that's a really good point, Roy. And you know, the lottery are looking to this project to determine our monitoring and evaluation criteria. They are not interested in giving us the framework to demonstrate what success looks like in terms of species recovery. They're looking to us to work across the a whole range of partners in the sector to design a framework that works. One of the interesting things back from the brink is that they used initially they wanted to use the species recovery curve as their indication of change, which was initially designed by the Conservation Science Department and RSPB some years ago. It's actually proven quite challenging to use that metric for species recovery, partly because with only a 4-year project length, it's quite difficult to demonstrate change for some species in that short space of time. And I think we in Wales will be looking to design what works for us, not just in the context of the project, but also potentially, for the sector as a whole, so that we've got some sort of legacy that can be used there. And I think Lurks are going to be fundamental to helping shape that. And we've deliberately not spent huge amounts of time on the monitoring evaluation framework at this pre-development stage, because we need to kind of get past the application, and then we've got the resource to really dedicate time on that. Yeah, no, that's a really good point from Roy there.
John, I think as well, on top of this, I mean, you've not only got an opportunity to look at distribution and abundance, which are key features of whether you've been successful, but also it's a really good opportunity to see how much engagement you're getting around particular species. You know, how many people are reporting things. So I think, use that metric as well.
Roy,
Yes.
some of the work we're doing will be citizen science type projects, so we're going to be generating quite huge amounts of data and engagement with people. So those points you've made are absolutely valid.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing to remember with any big lottery project like this. They as the principal funder will be as interested, in fact, you could say more interested in the impact and outreach we've had with people and communities, as much as they're interested in the response and the natural heritage, so the species and the habitats that we're focusing on. So the monitoring evaluation framework will be as much focused on the people outcomes as the outcomes for those species. Yeah. So, but this is why we need a dedicated resource, and why we've given ourselves 18 months as a development phase. I've seen projects of a similar size give themselves only 9 months. Nightmare. So much to get done in a very short space of time. And because of the pandemic, we've been more cautious in designing this project and giving ourselves more time to test and to make sure that our delivery framework is robust and we can consult with the right people in that 18-month period. Steve and Sinead, I'm not looking at what's coming from the chat. I'm mostly speaking. Do you want to pick out another question from somebody?
There's a comment from Laura about asking if anyone remembers bars. think a lot of us do. So that kind of web-based mapping system, allowing us to share details of projects. So I suppose there's a question there about how we report across the project and feed that down to kind of local delivery. I don't know. I don't know if we've got that far, but yeah, bars. Remember that.
I remember bars.
I'm getting a twitch in my eye just thinking about it.
It's a really good point, though. You know, a project of this size with this much public money, if we're successful, has to be seen to be accessible. The data has to be transparent, and the systems we use to report and spread that is going to be critical. Again, that would be another development phase task to get right. What I would say is, you know, NRW. This is just speaking on from NRW's perspective. There is an SM&R portal, and there's been quite a lot of time put into how data can be accessed via NRW systems. But yeah, I think basically that's a big to-do for the development phase. But it's really important to capture that here as part of this discussion. As I say, we're going to take all this back to the steering group and those involved in the bid development. So thank you, Laura, for that.
And Theon has asked, will there be a resource page on a website where local nature partnerships can request free reports on progress and delivery? They might want to request specific information that perhaps is missing from a report.
Yeah, so again, this is about I guess it's about still how we get the information out there, how we're transparent about progress with the project. Am I right there, Fionn? Fionn, do you want to switch on your mic if you want to elaborate on that? Say no if not.
Pnawn da pawb. Can you all hear me?
Brilliant.
Hi, yes. Just to kind of elaborate on my point, really. Naturally, I guess it would be, well, it's important to recognise that, of course, you can't write about every single detail that it's going to inherently appeal to every single local nature partnership. They may be wanting something more specific, perhaps something more niche, that won't be within the realms or the scope of a kind of general progress report. So I think it's about perhaps an idea is rather than giving everything to everyone, actually empowering these local nature partnerships to actually approach you and have that welcome open door policy in terms of being transparent with progress and developments. That's kind of my point, really. It'd be great to hear about what you think in terms of that.
I can only really agree. So I guess again, it's about the platform that we use to ensure that the project just isn't happening in a vacuum. So it's back to, I guess, the web-based platform we use, how we get information out there. Is there also about having key points throughout the development phase, but also the delivery phase, to have learning sessions, or possibly using an online conference facility to just provide an opportunity for people to feed in and get updates, because sometimes that's a bit more of an organic way. I don't know, those kind of critical check-in points, perhaps. Is that, I mean, does that sound like something that could work?
I personally think, sorry, it's Fionn again. I personally think that's a great idea. I think having a really kind of clear date or few dates, depending on how frequent you would want that, it really gives kind of that invaluable opportunity for people to feedback. Because I mean, at the end of the day, of course, you're in partnership with, with a large group of organizations, and even then in terms of the delivery partnerships as well. But I mean, of course, you're going to want to hear about that ground level and any ideas that perhaps local nature partnerships may have that could actually be very beneficial and insightful on a local scale. So I think that would be a great idea, and it would definitely be probably quite beneficial, I imagine.
Excellent. I mean, we've had discussion with some local partnerships about you know, where there's a particular concentration of activity that we schedule for Natur Am Byth. So let's think about sort of Gwynedd and Anglesey. You know, there's a lot happening. There's quite a lot happening in Pembrokeshire as well. But it's whether we want to have some particular forums locally for Natur Am Byth. But yeah, I think Fiona, that's a really good idea. So it's not just about having information accessible via a web platform. It's about actually creating those spaces. I think we've got more used to having video conferences, so you know it's one more cost-effective way to bring people together. But I think we'd like to. We have budgeted in some face-to-face gatherings as part of the development phase, as well as the delivery. But the development, we've got to get people together to make sure people are confident in the program of works we put together. Do we want to move on? Unless, well, Sinead and Steve, flag up if there's more people we need to draw attention to their questions, or whether we want to focus on question B or C at the same time. I mean, people can hopefully see those on the screen. So aligning with existing networks.
I haven't seen any more new questions pop up, so.
Does anyone want to come off mute and actually just ask a question of the room, or throw some feedback? That is. I can see a couple of people are typing. So Sorrel mentioned, well, actually, Sinead and Steve, do you want to respond to what Sorrel's put there?
I think Sorrel was responding to Laura about bars, and sort of basically there's a kind of a vacuum where bars was. There's no method of reporting.
Yeah, it was just a comment, yes, observation.
So this is something Natur Am Byth can actually help fill that vacuum potentially, yeah? It's kind of
And Mafalda says, are you planning to work with Welsh universities as well?
So we've got Bangor as part of ARC's Adder projects, and that's the one formal relationship with the university that's been wrapped into the bid. I think we haven't got any other formal links with universities in terms of the program for delivery, but it doesn't mean to say we wouldn't want to have those discussions during the development phase or even beforehand. Mafalda, is there particular links you could suggest? If you want to come off mute perhaps and talk about that question a bit more, or not, if that's if the technology is not permitting.
I think Dave has said that be very wary of developing an all singing, all dancing system like bars, not to repeat the mistakes. I think that's really true, and you know, whatever we do in terms of reporting and you know, communicating between sort of NAB and you know local delivery, you know, it sort of has to be try not to repeat old mistakes, like you say.
Absolutely. So Mafalda's not got a microphone, but not to worry. But yeah, so as I say, Bangor's the only university we've formally approached, and that's through ARC's project on Adder. So Paul Harries, has consultation started with the Welsh National Parks yet? So we've had a lot of contact with staff from Surrey National Park in the initial development of the Ureri project, and they're keen to see the range of Arctic alpines and the inverts and ferns that have been included within that project. So that's now been taken forward as a plant life-led project, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with National Trust, Cymdeithas Eryri, their volunteers, as well as a local network of botanists So sort of like power volunteers, very highly skilled volunteers who've helped design that in the national park in Snowdonia. Pembrokeshire, Pembrokeshire Coastal National Park, we've consulted with them on some of the species within the Pembrokeshire area, and we'd like to continue that into the development phase. But I think there's a question here for all protected landscapes, so AONBs and national parks, in terms of the role in terms of linking with Natur Am Byth. So it's something we've been taking forward, and would like to continue those discussions as a group of protected landscapes. Obviously, we have members of our NRW board who are very much involved in the AONBs national parks and keen to keep that discussion going. I think, speaking on behalf of Snowdonia, they were really pleased to see that focus on species, because the project could really help in terms of their own capacity. They're obviously doing great stuff on species conservation already, but this would be an additional resource to really move forward that agenda and celebrate the rare and wonderful that are within the national parks. Yeah, so yes, we want to continue those fruitful conversations with all the national parks. So all three national parks are relevant in Natur Am Byth. There's a small section of the Welsh Marshes project that dips into Brecon Beacons National Park, and obviously Pembrokeshire and Snowdonia, fully within their boundaries. So yeah, but also relevant for the AONBs, in particular Gower and the Llyn, as well as Ynys. So yeah, there's really strong links there, and it's been great to have conversations and involvement with the Llyn partnership, as well as AONBs on the Llyn there, on the role, particularly with coastal communities and a number of other priority habitats on the Llyn Peninsula there. So that's been good discussion we've been having with them. So yeah, relevant for many protected landscapes.
And leading on from that, Victoria Barker has asked, will you be reaching out to community councils, and how do we get involved? Well, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big project in the sense that it's Wales wide, and we've obviously got the ambitious engagement and comms package. But the reality is, it's got to be place based, the actual delivery, in terms of the conservation delivery. So community councils are critical to that. And again, in the development phase, we need to ensure we're doing the right level of consultation outreach with individuals across community councils that are particularly relevant. We have a list of draft locations and sites that we want to operate, and there has been a lot of good work done on that, linking obviously from the target species, their distribution, and those communities. With any bid of this size, you have to balance how much work you do in the pre-application stage before you've then got the dedicated resource to do that consultation. And that's anyone who's been involved in even a small lottery project, that's often how you demonstrate you've done enough engagement, but there's only so far you can take sometimes things, because you may not have a dedicated resource to actually do that engagement. And obviously this is whilst there's been an NRW resource to help make that happen, this is across the voluntary sector, so we have to kind of limit ourselves a wee bit sometimes on the deep engagement that we've been able to achieve. But yeah, community councils is fundamental. That was from Victoria. Was there any, Victoria, from the way you've led that, it's how we get involved. It sounds like you are part of a community council yourself. If you have a mic that operates, do you want to suggest, from your own perspective as part of a community council, how best we could undertake that consultation? I'll pause for Victoria in case she wants to come in there. Silence. Oh no, I can see a typing from Victoria there. No mic. Okay, so you're in Solva. Oh, lucky you. Fantastic. Yeah, love to hear more of this one. Okay, I mean, what we've got, as I mentioned, is like a, the list of sites we would like to be operating in. I think once we get the green light, hopefully from the lottery, that engagement with community councils would need to start in earnest. As I say, we've got the kind of hit list of communities we really want to touch base with on our plans. So yeah, Victoria, very much noted there. I'm going to stop talking now. Over to Steve and Sinead, if you want to pick out anything from the list there.
Well-
Mafalda would like to contact you later, John, if that's all right.
Who was that? Sorry.
So my eyesight is not all that good. Mafalda, Costa?
All right. Yep. Okay. Sure thing, Mafalda.
We've got a comment from Ben Rowson about Angwyddfa Cymru National Museum Wales. Maybe worth consulting for specialist expertise on some species and general nationwide platforms for storytelling or engagement. I can't remember if we have spoken to National Museum of Wales, John.
We have not spoken to National Museum Wales. No.
That would be a good
Yeah.
partner.
Absolutely. And that was from, who was it who said that comment? Sorry. Is that Ben? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
And then Graham says there are obviously educational institutions across Wales who would be keen to be part of NAB. Also, there are several FSC field stations within striking distance of project areas.
That's a really good point, Graham. I think traditional forms of engagement that have often been seen in lottery projects in terms of using existing education providers. We have to have that as part of the engagement program. We have got resource not just within new project officers who will be leading conservation work, but some engagement work. We've also got engagement contractors costed into the delivery phase, and we'd like to partner up with some very local providers to ensure that we're working with the right people. So yeah, no, that's a really good point. We also have to demonstrate to the lottery maybe less traditional ways of engaging as well. So yeah, I think the whole engagement program is going to be a very significant part of the development phase. It's one of the reasons why we've got a dedicated full-time officer who will be leading on that with some support from contractors to ensure that that program is really innovative. So we blend sort of walks and talks and traditional sort of education outreach with events, arts, practitioners, even some installations in some locations as well, and looking at actually maybe a national exhibition in terms of celebrating those species within Wales. That there's ideas we've got, but we would need to really build on that in the development phase. But yeah, choosing the right people, the right providers and delivery partners locally is really important. And I mentioned earlier, there's a range of ways of doing that. One of those is through procurement, to work with the right people. So yeah.
Yeah, Fionn has made a comment there about kind of local scale contractors and making sure that they don't miss out on the opportunity to apply.
Yeah, Fionn, really good point. And I think this is one that's been raised by the steering group. Other projects which have been operating in sort of deep rural areas, as part of their package of works, they've embedded sort of training opportunities to actually treat the whole project as a way to upskill and bring new people online into the sector. You can't just kind of put a whole budget for contractors and hope that the right people are going to be there, because if you're dealing with particularly remote locations, actually that you can't assume that's the case, or they may be tied up in delivery with other areas. So yeah, it's a really good point, Fiona. And yeah, we've definitely considered that in how we've put together the budget.
We don't have any more comments apart from a little discussion about Celta Wales, but I think have we covered the last question, John?
I don't think.
Actually, the second.
I think. Well, I think the third one's important. So this is about how we ensure new project staff and volunteers are integrated at the local level. I think it's slightly linked to what we just discussed there in terms of training needs. But again, this project not being sort of part of a vacuum and respecting the huge number of groups and societies and volunteer networks that exist within Wales. One of the challenges I think sometimes projects in Wales have is there's not always the same human resource pool, and I mean that not just in terms of staff, also in terms of volunteers, and sometimes the same people get stretched to feed into various initiatives, and I think we need to reach new audiences and reach new volunteers, but it's I mean, I know there's people here from the Wild Archers Federation and other sort of voluntary networks. Just keen to get your opinions really and how we kind of ensure those new project staff and volunteers are part of something at the local level or fit into existing networks. Any thoughts about that? Or Sinead and Steve, you might have thoughts yourself. It's a tough one. That's why I put it in there.
Yeah, no, I think it's important not to target the same people all the time. It's very easy to do that. On the other hand, they are an extremely useful resource anyhow, and they will have their own contacts. I certainly found that in a Back to Text Alone project we ran last year, the helpfulness and the usefulness of things like social media extended the reach far beyond that I could even imagine. One person borrows a bat detector from me, they put it up on their Facebook page and say what bats they've had, and then their friends come in and it can escalate. So there are lots of things that we can do, but I would certainly be interested personally in hearing if people have got any very specific ideas.
Alison says, what about the farming community? Oh, you made that comment earlier, Alison. I did jot it down.
Yeah, so the landowning, land management community are absolutely fundamental to this whole program, as are in a marine context fisheries and other sea users. So yes, and part of the advocacy and training is about how we can involve the right landowners, and not just at the individual level, but collectively. So you've mentioned NFU there. I think we need to consider how we utilise membership organisations for land managers to reach as wide a range of land managers, landowners as we can. I think this project has obviously been developed in the context of post-CAP and sustainable land management approach in Wales, and it will be happening during this sort of interim period, and I think there's some really important questions to answer there in terms of how species conservation is integrated into a post-CAP world. So yeah, I think it's a really good point there raised by Alison. But yeah, they're sort of high up there on the hit list of important groups for this project to be engaging with, and also hopefully working with key landowners to demonstrate best practice as other successful projects have done. But we're going to need to do it at a kind of Wales-wide level really. So yeah, very important there from Alison.
And also CLBA, FUW.
Yeah. We've had a few comments come in, and if Steve's eyesight's not, but it is quite small text actually. I'll read through a few of them. So Fionn says, great to hear you're looking at. Oh no, it's gone off my screen. Too many people commenting now. I've lost it.
So great to hear you looking at local employment and placement and volunteering positions. Hiring local should be crucial if the application pool allows, yes, as it would address a number of factors. A, they're already integrated at local level because they're local, good point, Fionn. B, upskilling opportunities that benefits local community development, yep, and actually on that, the lottery have stressed in their new application window that building opportunities locally for employment is going to be key because it's post-COVID, green recovery. And then C from Fionn, there's emotional investment from local communities with the vision and delivery of Natur Am Byth and plenty more. Yes, hearts and minds. Brilliant. Right, we're stealing all of that, Fionn, okay? Right, I'll shut up now. Sinead or Steve, do you want to read out anyway? We've got 1 minute left.
Richard Price has made a good point that BSBI doesn't seem to have been consulted. They're going to get a new Welsh officer in post, so he or she will be an invaluable source in organising recorders and members.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because these type of specialist volunteers are going to be critical because some of those target species we've got on the list are actually profoundly data deficient. Part of this project is about improving the data landscape for a number of target species. Okay, Richard, we've captured that.
Just worth pointing out the chat, all the text on the chat will be saved as I understand it. So if we don't get a chance to read out your questions, they're not going to be lost.
Yeah. Finally, Fionn's asked about the farming fishing communities sort of consultation discussions. I think we're going to have to save a lot of that for the development phase. Yeah, so we've had some, but not comprehensive consultation with sort of farming and fisheries reps. It's fair to say. Folks, I know Laura's got a question there as well, but we're now at 4:35, so it's time for us to come back into the main room, if that's okay. So Adam, yeah, I think Adam, yeah, can you bring us back? I'm just going to speak to Adam now. Hello. Hi.
Okay, you're back in the main room, everyone.
Fantastic. Hello, Corasso, everyone. Hello. How are we doing? I hope we enjoyed our breakout sessions. I think we got there in the end in terms of the technology once we got our whiteboard working. So we managed to get into a flow. Lots of questions there coming in at the end as well. I'm hoping that Kate, Julian, Steve, and Sinead all can use mics. Is that okay, folks? Are you able to talk?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Can I perhaps pick on Kate and Julian first to feed back some sort of key points and issues raised from the resilient sector breakout. So we're going to use this plenary session as an opportunity to cross-pollinate so that we can share. Oh, Kate's having a comfort break. So what I think Sinead, Steve, and we're going to kick off then, if that's all right, and then Kate will join us in a few minutes. But yes, yeah, so we're just going to use this opportunity to share across the rooms now that we're all back in the central room, and then open for questions after we fed back. So seeing as I've talked quite a lot, can I ask Steve and Sinead to do a bit of a double act in feeding back from our delivering place-based priorities breakout session?
Sure. I think one of the things I picked up is that we need to find a way of communicating what we're planning on doing and how we're doing it as we go along. So almost like a feedback loop, particularly with the LBAP, the Nature Recovery Partnerships.
Something, a kind of simple, regular way of reporting what work is going on under NAB.
Yeah, we talked about that digitally in terms of ensuring that the Natur Am Byth website and platform can share regular updates, but also creating spaces, possibly digitally, throughout the development phase where we've got sort of key dates where we can come together and engage possibly nationally, but then also importantly in sort of a local hub as well. So North West Wales, South West Wales, and give people the opportunity to not just receive an update, but actually to help inform and shape. So yeah, we kept talking about the importance of that 18-month development phase to really use that to make sure the people are part of the bid. So that was great. That was very helpful.
We had quite a bit of discussion about partners that we might want to consult in the development phase. So we had like local rivers trusts, farming unions, so like the NFU was mentioned, community councils, the National Museum of Wales, educational institutions like FSC.
Yep, and then we also had the importance for transparency with data, and we sort of reminisced about bars, didn't we? And then we we agreed we didn't want to try and recreate some sort of all singing, all dancing, platform, but we did talk similarly in terms of the importance of having those critical points to come together to share and help bring partners to shape the bid. Also, then when we're actually operating and running, it's how that data is shared, and the importance of LERCs, so the local environmental record centres in Wales, particularly during that development phase, to help shape our monitoring evaluation framework from a species perspective. But we talked about the importance of this is not just about species, this is about changing attitudes, this is about people, and that being fundamental. I can see Kate smiling, look. So yeah, yeah, tick. But I think that was a really useful discussion, and great to have feedback there from LERC representatives in our breakout session there. That was really important. Steve and Sinead, any other
Wish
points?
I'd been a better note taker now. I've literally written about 4 lines.
I thought we've covered the main points. I mean, obviously, lots of little things kept coming up.
Yeah.
People who we should be looking to, talking to, the generation of data, biological data, and the use of LERCs in that.
Can I say one other thing I felt was really important was about we talked about embedding in local networks, and part of that was about local contractors. So how your procurement process brings on board individuals and small scale companies, but also then the training needs that may be required, because a lot of this, not all of it, but quite a lot of Natur Am Byth will be delivering in deep rural areas. And that upskilling and sort of potential to actually bring new people into the sector, because this is about resilience and this is about building the sector. And I thought that was really great to see that. And Fionn Mitchell said quite a lot on that, so that was great. So we're going to steal some of Fion's comments there, so that's great. I think that's probably enough from our breakout group. If maybe we could hand over to Julian and Kate, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up the feedback from our group. Lots and lots of stuff in there. I can't even hope to try and do this justice. There were, I think, probably some comments that came up in our group that are probably equally relevant to what the other group was discussing, and we'll make sure that we kind of pick those up and pop them in the right place in terms of gathering this together. So we looked at resilience. We were looking at the resilience of the sector, particularly the environment, the biodiversity sector in its broadest sense. And we looked at barriers initially, and there was a whole load of discussion around how we share information better on what different organisations are doing. So not just on the outputs, but actually, while projects are live, and recognising that different organisations have different priorities. How can landowners hope to engage with those if we can't signpost people to them clearly? A little bit of discussion about how we up the ante, up our game, where biodiversity is still seen as a bit of a nice to do, a bit of a nice add-on rather than core. We know there's a biodiversity emergency, but there are still people, decision makers, who don't. So how do we do that? Lots of discussion, not surprisingly, about continuity of funding beyond projects, and also continuity of knowledge. It's not just when projects come to an end that you lose the ability to deliver. You also very often don't have a way of capturing all the knowledge and making sure that that continues to live on in some kind of legacy. So that's an area that we identified as needing to do better at. Quite a lot of discussion about volunteers, not surprisingly, how critical role they play, about how we recruit them, how volunteers adequately reflect the diversity of Welsh society. There's lots of specialist input. Nature conservation couldn't do what it does without the specialist input of volunteers, but that takes time and money and resources to both develop and train, but also to ensure that we capture the results of their work, and that needs core funding to maintain that. As somebody said, it is volunteers who underwrite the recording effort in Wales, well, not just Wales, across the UK. How we take the public with us to mainstream our messages into wider society. And as somebody said, these days ecologists need to be multidisciplinary just as much as anybody else. And I thought that was kind of a really good way of putting it. So we've identified quite a lot of barriers. Amongst the solutions, and these are not marry up perfectly to the barriers that we talked about, quite a lot of discussion about young people, about the potential for youth apprenticeships in the sector, the opportunity maybe for Natur Am Byth to have work-based field work, working closely with Welsh universities, but not just in an academic sense, across the piece. As a sector, to build stronger links with other sectors that the alliances that we potentially have, and the two that we particularly discussed were the health and well-being, which obviously might help us get more into that societal mainstream, and actually skill sharing between sectors. It's not just quite clearly we know that we believe that there's well-being benefits from developing our biodiversity conservation work, but actually there's probably skill sharing between the two as well, and also better work with the tourism sector. There was a little discussion towards the end around the need for us to have high-level agreement amongst the environmental NGOs to agree that collaborative messaging, the things that we think are really important, and the multiple benefits that species recovery can provide, because otherwise we just end up trapped in that kind of species recovery corner. The need for sufficient core funding for the organisations to manage volunteer development, to grow both the specialisms, the people who underwrite this, who want to do that because they love that stuff, and they're just very happy to do that in a voluntary capacity, but also those who want to develop this as a career, and they may be early career researchers and actually want to, this is where they want to put more time into it, but they need, somebody needs to pay for that. And then the final one was around how we communicate, the need to design in the communicable outcomes, as I think how we describe them, at the outset of programs and projects, and the opportunities that come from things like landscape visualization and some more creative ways of getting across what saving species from extinction is actually all about. So a whole range of stuff in there, some of which was more kind of conceptual about how we, or more corporate, should I say, about kind of, how we make the sector more resilient. Others was about how we make projects and programs more resilient, but those are
Fantastic. Kate, did you want to add anything else to that, or that was a
No,
very comprehensive summary?
Only can Julian come and summarise every session that I do, because he's quite clearly a consummate professional, and I think he should be on the beep. He's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Julian. You've done a great job. And can I just say that also Adam has sent me, who's doing technical support and is wonderful Wiz, has sent me the details of both of the chats from both sessions. So we have all of the fantastic detail that all of you have participated in the chat shared as part of that as well. So thank you very much, everybody.
No, it's been really ever so useful, and I think we also talked about the importance of syncing Natur Am Byth with local nature partnership coordinators that will be coming online as well. So whilst those aren't individuals that are necessarily in post now, they will be as part, concurrently with this program. And there's a really fantastic opportunity there to make sure we're making those links. And I think we talked quite a lot about that transparency on progress with the project during the development phase, and having those opportunities to have people shape and inform how we develop things. I wanted to open up to the floor, because some people may have wanted to be in one breakout session but were in the other. So if anybody wants to put, I can see there's a couple of people typing, so we're going to have a few, hopefully some comments coming up, and we will read them out, if that's okay. So any other thought? I think I'm really pleased that in your breakout session, Kate and Julian, you talked about the health and well-being agenda and making links there to actually the health sector. I think that I'm really pleased to have seen that, and I guess we've got the public service boards here in Wales that is one mechanism to help achieve that. We've got a question from Laura from Koi Kadu in terms of best contact details for Natur Am Byth. It's probably me, to be honest. My contact details should be available from the WBP conference pack. So please get in contact with myself for any questions. And as Kate just mentioned, you know, we've got all the text from the chats as part of those breakout sessions there. So we will be working with that, and we can send information out. Can I post my email here? Yes, I can. If I'm going to do that, but I can't talk at the same time.
I was going to just make a comment on something that Julian said about sort of, well, it was kind of about the fact that we have sort of paid traineeships in some of our projects, and I know other organisations do the same thing. And there's a point there around sort of how accessible this sector is, you know, particularly if for people who don't go to university, for example. So that's a really important thing about inclusivity and being able to build up skills in young people particularly.
We shouldn't forget about the BAME group as well either.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that's a really important point. There is a project that we evaluate in England across 4 of the wildlife trusts called Wild Paths, which is aimed at diversifying the workforce and bringing entry level diverse young people into
Oh, that's a shame. I think we've just lost Kate. Just to build on what Kate was saying, so I think I myself, I'm going to a Race Matters workshop that will be led by Natural England's diversity champion on Wednesday this week. We've also made contact with a BAME organisation based in Wales who called ETSI, and they've actually been contracted by Welsh Government to lead on consultation on inclusion and diversity and outreach across the voluntary sector in Wales. So we're seeking to work with the right stakeholders during the development phase to ensure that our engagement programme is inclusive. We've made that one of our ambitions within the vision. We're also lucky in the sense that some of the conservation delivery is going to be happening next to some of the most densely populated areas of Wales, with urban communities in South East Wales and Swansea, Neath Port Talbot. So we've actually got some great opportunities to link up the species conservation work with urban communities. So we're excited about developing that further. I think Kate's maybe try. I think she's.
Sorry.
She may join us back in, but if anyone's got any other. Oh, hi, Kate.
No, that's okay. I lost my intertubes for a moment, but thank you very much for picking up. There wasn't any. I was just going to say there was lots of lessons that we can learn from that as well, and a lot of the biggest barriers that are still remaining for those young people and for diversifying organisations were actually cultural issues and structural issues within conservation organisations themselves, rather than perception barriers, etc. From the young people's perspective. So there's some really important things that we need to work on. These aren't things that are going to be solved within the timeline of a project, but they are long-term program vision type things that we absolutely should be working towards, and that a program like Natur Am Byth should be taking us along that journey. So thank you, John. That's all from me.
Anyone else want to add comments into the box there? I think Ben might have been typing there. We've got another sort of 5 minutes if there's any other questions people want to raise, either from one of the groups that you weren't able to attend. I've seen universities crop up quite a number of times in terms of being able to access sort of young people, but also good to see the mention of youth apprenticeships as well. That's something we need to look at in terms of the training program that we've got wrapped into Natur Am Byth as well. Anything else? I think we discussed in our breakout session the importance of land managers and landowners as a group. Now they're high up on important target audience for Natur Am Byth. Obviously at the individual landowner level in terms of some of the sites that we're wanting to actually take forward within the project, but then collectively in how we work with the right organisations to get feedback from landowners, land managers, and the best projects have actually demonstrated excellent works on landowners and shared that sort of best practice. We've had discussions previously about sort of hubs, landowner hubs, where we can share best practice, and we've got an exciting conservation grazing theme within Natur Am Byth, which is going to be spread across a number of the target areas across Wales. So there's quite a lot wrapped into.
Yeah, we talked about. Can I just jump in? And we talked about kind of reporting and communicating what's kind of going on, but I think that's another useful point about sharing resources as well. So any best practice, any resources we produce, any obviously data, then that's also important for us to be sharing.
And just thank you, Fionn, for your positive comments. Diolch yn fawr. As I'm glad you found it informative. Excellent. Thank you for that. And Sue Colwell, local businesses supporting, sponsoring, having particular focus on one of the vulnerable species. Yes, possibly providing volunteer teams to take part in the programme. Absolutely. So looking for those sort of local advocates for important species on their doorsteps. We've talked about this sort of species champion programme that has been a sort of political advocacy exercise that Wales Environment Link have run traditionally in Wales, and how that's an important thing that too with can support. But actually, not just at the political level, but yeah, local businesses and community groups. We talked about community councils in our breakout group and the importance of those and consulting with those communities. We've got a list of key sites we're wanting to work on, so we do have a list of those communities. They're sort of on our horizons for the development phase. We did talk a bit about that in terms of reaching out to those. We have factored in some corporate sponsorship in terms of the budget in Natur Am Byth, very modestly, but we're hoping that the green marketplace in Wales, which is something that will be launched here, could be one of the mechanisms to seek corporate sponsorship and support for elements of the project, which would be really exciting to see. Thank you for that, Sue. Right, I'm going to stop talking. Or Sinead or someone else.
There's a comment from Mike saying we concentrate on providing free trees to landowners / organisations and councils, and we do all the pre and post management for 50 years, only broadleaf woodlands. We would love to work with anyone creating habitat corridors, etc.
Well, might be the Barbastell project then, so in Pembrokeshire. So that's Vincent Wildlife Trust led initiative as part of Natur Am Byth. That's particularly relevant there. They've already got a list of really keen landowners in a lot of those ancient woodlands, but they're looking at that kind of wider landscape connectivity. So Mike, thanks for that. I think yeah, we should probably keep in touch on that, particularly with Vincent Wildlife Trust. We've got 3 more minutes till we get chucked out. Has anyone else got any? I'll hand over to either Steve or Julian or Sinead to. What else have we got there? So that's from Karen as a facilitator, so we can feedback in some of the sessions using the Hoover platform. Okay, that looks like a plug. That's a conference plug there. That's fine. Okay. Unless there's any other comments, thank you, Karen, that's great. I think we can probably wrap up this workshop, and I'd just like to say huge diolch yn fawr to everyone who's fed in. This is absolutely vital for us to help make the strongest bid we can so that it delivers for the whole sector in Wales and help support the green recovery agenda and saving the most threatened species in Wales and reconnecting people to nature. So just huge thank you, diolch yn fawr iawn, and hopefully we'll see you again at a future conference-engagement event. So thanks everyone.